Welcome to Beauty and the Beast, where we create a safe haven for Black men to engage in deep conversations and share their journeys in a judgment-free space.
In each episode, we dive into topics that matter, from identity and relationships to personal growth and resilience. This is a space where your story is valued, your voice is heard, and your journey is shared with others who, like you, may feel alone in the world.
Join us as we normalize conversations that are too often left unspoken and build a community rooted in support, understanding, and empowerment. Whether you're seeking connection, inspiration, or simply a place to be yourself, you're in the right place.
Through heartfelt storytelling and insightful dialogue, the podcast aims to dismantle stigma and foster a deeper understanding of the emotional landscapes navigated by Black men, ultimately highlighting the beauty that emerges from their journeys. Let's break the myth that Black men are beasts. I'm Malik Baraka, leadership coach, skills trainer, workshop facilitator, and a man of the culture.
My name is Kyle Ball, University of Miami Hurricane, corporate leader, advocate for mental health, and movie producer. Welcome to Beauty and the Beast. Let's start the conversation.
Mr. Quigley, as I like to affectionately call you, and so do a lot of people, thank you, first of all, for being here. We really appreciate you taking out the time.
Man, glad I could be here.
Yeah, bro. So this podcast is one that we like to believe is a little bit different, right? And we attack things more from an emotional perspective as it relates to your journey, right?
Okay.
So I know you as a husband, a father, an Ivy League grad on a couple of fronts, a network executive, and now an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So
maybe Ivy League adjacent, but I'll take it.
Okay.
I'll take it.
All right. But what I want to focus on is the journey that is Michael Quigley,
Okay.
right? And so that journey begins obviously as a child. So what I want to know as our opening salvo is what in your childhood set you on the path that you took to get to the point where you are a successful entrepreneur?
Yeah. So for me, my childhood journey starts with my parents and the upbringing that I had with my parents. I grew up the son of a military man and a mom who always worked in service in the church and in the community. I was born in California, also lived in West Germany, Michigan, and Louisiana, extended family in Texas and Louisiana. And so for me, that childhood experience of moving around, being exposed to different cultures, being exposed to different people, number one, just kind of implanted in me the importance of being able to connect with people from different backgrounds and different circumstances. I always say that when you move around a lot as a kid, you either learn to make friends quickly and connect with people, or you just go inside yourself and don't make relationships because you know you're going to lose those people in 2 years. For me, it was more the former than the latter. I'd say the other important thing, though, in terms of my childhood that put me on this path was seeing how hard my parents worked. And now I have a greater appreciation for their story about how, for both of them, they left home at relatively early ages to both join the military because they wanted something more for their lives. And I think in their own way, both my mom and my dad taught me from a very early age to want more for my life. My dad was very direct about it. He said, when you finish high school, you're either going to the military or you're going to college, but you won't be here. So that provides you a lot of motivation.
Just
and in my case, I knew that the military was not for me. And so that really kind of geared my mindset towards college. The other thing I would say is, for me, mentorship and people pouring into me has always been an important part and an important theme of my life. And I was in middle school, 8th grade, 13 years old. And a counselor called us into his office, a group of about 10 or 12 of us. And I was living in Germany at the time. And he said, at some point, all of you will move back to the United States. Your parents will be stationed back in the States, and you're all really smart, bright students. You're all on a track to go to college. And he handed us a piece of paper and said, when you get back to the States, These are some great schools for you to think about and consider. And that was probably the first time someone said to me, you're going to be going to college. And so start thinking and planning for it now. Interestingly enough, one of the schools on that list was Rice University. I had never heard of Rice, didn't know anything about the school, but that seed planted in 8th grade came to fruition years later when I applied to Rice, got accepted, and that's where I did my undergraduate studies.
Excuse me. So when you went to Rice, you went there for, like you said, for your graduate studies. Like, what did you pull from that as far as how it helped you evolve from the young boy that went there to the young man that left?
Yeah, I would say it started actually before I got there.
Yeah.
So I applied to colleges. By this time, my parents and I were living in Louisiana. I applied to a group of colleges. I got accepted to Rice, got accepted to some other great schools too. But in particular, Tulane University, which was in-state, had offered me a full tuition paid scholarship all 4 years. Rice had offered me a financial aid package as well, but it wasn't 4 years of tuition paid. And I knew that Rice University was the right school for me. And so I still remember going to the dinner table when we were going to have the family discussion about where I was going to go to school. And I had prepped in my mind the script that I was going to run through with my parents to explain to them that I'm a man and this is my life and it's my education and I should get to make this decision. And I want to go to Rice for these sets of reasons. And if you don't support my decision, I'll figure it out on my own.
How was that met?
Got to the dinner table and I'm nervous thinking about this conversation. And my dad opens it up with, so let's talk about where you're going to go to school. But let me just say, son, wherever you want to go, we support your decision. Man, I threw the script away. All the stuff I had practiced, I'm skipping to the last page of what I was going to say. But that moment for me, having my dad signal to me that you are a man and this is your decision to make, and we trust you to make the right decision. That really, I think, was the first big shift in mindset for me. The second thing I would say is when I got to Rice, it's a fantastic school, great institution. One of the first times I had been surrounded by kids who were as smart or smarter than me. And I remember feeling intimidated and that I just could not measure up in this environment. Meeting my best friend in life, Shay Harrison, that freshman year, and finding in him a guy who, like me, public school, played basketball, smart guy, but not the smartest guy in the room. I just call him we're just regular kids who just work hard, just happen to go to a good school. Meeting him and leaning on him when I needed help and stuff, and him leaning on me when he needed help on stuff, that really helped me get through that transition from what was Louisiana Public Schools to Rice University. And then I'd say the third thing in that journey at Rice was there was an internship program I did right after my junior year, between my junior and senior year, Sponsors for Educational Opportunity. And they allowed me the opportunity to work in New York City for an investment bank, Lehman Brothers. It's the first time I'd been to New York, the first time I'd had any kind of work experience like that. Candidly, given my background, it was the first time I had seen a professional corporate, in any way, work environment. To have the opportunity to, through that internship, get that kind of exposure and to learn over the course of that summer that I could hold my own. I still remember kind of at the end of that summer sitting down with my hiring manager, and he said, you're one of the best analysts we've had, and we'd love to have you come back. And I said to him, how do you how do you know who's a good analyst here? I mean, we're all here working hard. And he laughed out loud and said, trust me, we know the difference between people who are really working and those who just look like they're working.
So I appreciate what you just shared, Michael, because, bro, you just took me somewhere that I did not expect to go and have a epiphany that I did not expect to discover today, just from what you just shared. And that is, it wasn't until this moment when you were sharing that I realized that I never had a conversation with my mother, who raised me with a single mom, or anybody else in my family about where I was going to college.
Wow.
That at that point, from what I had experienced and what I was battling internally, knowing and unknowingly, I just felt that I had to fucking figure it out. And I didn't feel that anybody cared or could give me the support that I might have needed at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. I didn't either. And I'm dealing with some emotion over here, if I'm being honest.
Hey. Sit in that, brother.
Yeah.
Sit in that.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, speaking of feeling supported, right? But I also heard you say something, and then when you talked about being at Rice, I sensed some level of insecurity.
Yeah.
How did your childhood shape that? And I can only imagine the expectations that are placed upon you from a military family. Like, how does that make you feel, like, as that person entering college?
Yeah, I think that for me, Rice was the first time that I experienced failure in an academic setting. I had never failed a test throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. I was, I from elementary school was kind of put into these gifted and talented programs. In high school, I took honors classes.
Yeah.
In some respects, the last couple of years of high school weren't particularly challenging and rigorous for me in ways that I had seen before in my educational journey. And so going to Rice, where when they say you need to practice these problems, not because we're going to grade the homework, but because you just need to practice the problems so that you understand the material. Or going to Rice, where I had to learn after you go to class and take the notes, you should review the notes, not just kind of assume as you write it down, you know it. Being in an environment where you have to not just know things, but apply your knowledge, and doing so where everyone in the class is smart.
Yeah.
We're grading on a curve. So, your 82 might look and feel good until you find out the mean on the test is a 87. You're like, wait a minute, what happened here? And so, to your point, for me, there was a lot of insecurity at Rice the first couple of years. There was a lot of, do I fit in here? But as you said, Malik, there was not an option of, well, I'll drop out or transfer. That was not an option. I was gonna have to figure out how to get through.
What was the story that you first told yourself the first time you failed?
Need to change my major. There was that story. But I had to confront that this was just a different place, and I was going to have to do something different if I was going to thrive in this place. And so for me, the doing something different meant getting over the mental hurdle of the only one who goes to tutoring sessions are kids who aren't smart. I'm not going to a tutoring session. I had to say, you know what? If I'm not passing the test, I need to go to the tutoring session.
Word.
Those kinds of things, which again, I just never thought I would have to do. I had to do them. And so, yeah, I think that first year especially, but those first couple of years were an important transition for me in learning not just how to get by on, I've got some base level of intelligence and smarts, but no, you have to work hard too.
So where do you think that fear of failure came from?
I think the fear of failure for me came from, if I don't make it at Rice, what am I going back home to? And when my parents moved to Louisiana, my last 2 years of high school, we moved to Louisiana. When we moved to Louisiana, I just remember looking around at that environment and thinking, if I stay here, I'm going to end up getting some girl pregnant, having to take some job to raise some baby, and I'll be here forever. And I just could not let that happen.
So
That's heavy.
So, for our audience, which we want to make sure they walk away with things and tools that they can use, what would you say to someone who is in that phase of life, who has that fear of failure? How do they overcome that fear of failure as you're sitting in a university seat?
Yeah. I think for me, part of the motivation in overcoming the fear of failure is, what's your alternative? And I didn't have a soft landing spot alternative. And so when you don't have a soft landing spot alternative, it forces you to, as you said earlier, figure it out, whatever it is. And looking back on how my parents both supported me, but also made it very clear to me, this is the time in life where you have to figure things out. I, at the time, felt like they weren't giving me the support that I needed. But now I look back and appreciate that what they were showing me was, we trust you to make the right decisions. And by the way, part of being an adult is figuring out the solutions to these things. And so now as a father, I try to make sure that I'm giving my daughters the support they need, but also letting them know that I have confidence in them to figure things out. And part of having confidence in your kids being able to figure things out is acknowledging they will get something wrong. I definitely made mistakes at Rice. I definitely did things that, looking back on it, I probably shouldn't have done. A lot of it didn't get back to my parents because in my mind, it was just, I got to figure these things out. So, if I'm spending too much money on my phone bill and I'm a little short on cash, I didn't have the luxury of just calling my dad and saying, could you put some more money in my account? I better figure out how to hustle up and get some money. And so, I just think sometimes, necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes adversity without a soft landing spot requires you to push through the fear. Or if you succumb to the fear, then just know that the consequences may not be consequences that you want to live with. But I just, like I said, I knew that was not, I couldn't go back to plan B.
So as you sit here today, right, and people who are listening, watching, they may feel like you had your shit together, right? They may feel like, okay, I was able to figure it out. I had some challenges. I failed a couple classes, but I graduated. I mean, is that the case? I mean, did you have your shit figured out, or did you have to really stump your toe, and maybe socially even, to get to the point where you figured out what to do next?
Let's be honest. I'm still figuring it out.
Okay. I'm
still figuring it out. I stubbed my toe academically. Like I said, failed tests, had never failed tests before. I went in as a chemical engineering major. I dropped the major because I realized this Rice level physics and chemistry is not the physics and chemistry I did in high school. And not only am I not up to the task, but quite honestly, I don't even enjoy this. Like I said, surrounding myself with people, learning to accept help, learning as a young man, learning as a young Black man, learning as a young prideful Black man, that I have to accept help. I'm just not going to get through this by myself and on my own.
That part.
Those lessons were important for me. I had never studied with anyone before I got to college. I found people to study with. And on the social side, it's interesting. As much as I moved around a lot in my younger years and felt like I had met lots of people and as a result could kind of fit in lots of different situations. Rice for me challenged my notions of how broad is your multicultural lens. Because my multicultural lens coming into Rice was, I knew white people and black people. I knew white people that spoke English and German. Rice for me was, oh, there are Hispanic people too. Oh, there are Asian people too. Oh, we need to distinguish South Asian from Southeast Asian. And so learning to interact with people, learning more about their culture,
your world expanded,
and learning to accept people's culture, not from a place of judging it. Like I tell my kids constantly, things aren't weird. They're different.
Yeah.
So learning not to judge people's culture, but to accept it, be curious about it, be open to it. I'd say kind of socially, Rice taught me that too. Rice also taught me socially, black people are different.
Mm-hmm. Not a
So in retrospect, the black people that I knew, my mom is from Louisiana, my dad's from Texas. I knew Southern black in retrospect. I didn't know New York Northeast black. We left California when I was 11 years old. I really didn't know West Coast black. Didn't know my friend Sean, Kansas City, Kansas. I didn't know Midwest black or Chicago black. And so learning, black culture is just much broader and much richer than the lens I'm used to. I think also that was a big adjustment for me socially.
Say more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sophomore year, this guy comes in. He's a freshman from Chicago, and having a party. People are saying, "Put this song on. Put this song on. Put this music on." He asked us to put on some house music. I said, "Put on some what?" He said, "Some house music." I don't know what he's talking about. He goes back to his room. He brings out a tape because we're old like that. He brings out a tape, puts it in. First time I'd heard house music. Had no idea what this was.
Is that the first time I heard the water dance?
Man, he talking about everybody do the percolator. I said, do the what-a-lator? And so just something simple and basic like that, you know? I'm going to say that kind of when it comes to culture, music is important, food is important, fashion's important, religion's important. So within our black community, coming to realize, there's this richness in the tapestry of the music we listen to, the way that we dance and express ourselves there. There's a richness in our fashion and how we present ourselves and how we dress ourselves. And there's a richness and diversity in terms of the food that we eat. And so kind of learning that while I was at Rice allowed me then, by the time I left Rice and went to New York, to get to New York and say, I've got to adjust to this is how New York is, as opposed to getting to New York and treating it as if everything in New York was weird and I was the normal.
So, what I really want people to understand is that your journey involves one of education, right? And that you getting to the place where you are today, you had to go through just in your 4 years and maturation process of getting over fear of failure.
Yeah.
But then learning how to excel. Right. And I hear you in terms of saying you got to figure it out. But a lot of people don't. Yeah. I mean, I've got friends that they didn't make it past their freshman year. Right. And they went home and somebody got pregnant. I mean, so what differentiates you to figure it out versus where a lot of us don't?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think surrounding myself with people who, like me, were also trying to figure it out. Surrounding myself with people who, like me, wanted more for themselves and wanted more out of life. And yes, we can have fun while we're in college and definitely we're going to enjoy the college experience. But like, make no mistake about it, we're on a 4-year plan here. There's no 4.5. There's no 5-year. We're on a 4-year plan and we're getting out. I just think that surrounding yourself with that community becomes really important. And let's be honest, sometimes when you surround yourself with that community, that means you may have to cut some people loose who are absolutely cool people, but they're just not good for you.
That part.
Right? I firmly believe that you tell me who your friends are, I can tell you a lot about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the people in this world who figure and say that, you know, I'm 10 toes down for my boys, right? You know, I'm ride or die, right? Because we've been through all this. But then they find themselves in college and they don't have that tribe. Like, so what do you think about people who are like, nah, I'm not going to cut my people off because that's selling out?
Even when I was in high school, I made the decision to surround myself with people who were going somewhere. And I'll say this, particularly in Louisiana, that became socially, acutely a very difficult thing to do, because in Louisiana at that time, it really was black and white racially. And it really was black and white socially, meaning it's very clear you're either with us or you're against us. There's no middle ground. For me, one of the only black kids in my high school classes, hearing from my black peers at that time that me trying to go to school and do well in classes, that was white stuff, that was hard. That was hard, but I also knew, again, if you're telling me that this stuff is white stuff, I got to know that there are other black people in this world who are striving and pushing to do more. So if it's just not here in this local community, let me get myself to a place where that is. And so transitioning from high school to Rice, getting in a community with other black students, mind you, we didn't have a lot of black students at Rice, but at least getting in a community of other black students who, like Sean and like Mark and like Pam and like Alicia, came from a place of we want more and we're willing to do what it takes. That made the difference for me. And I don't know that I'm unique and special in that if I had not had them as influences, if I didn't surround myself with the right people, I don't know that I would be any different from anyone else who falls victim to, I wanted more in life, but then the pull of these other things kept me from it. But I just always say that's the importance of surrounding yourself with good folks. And let's be clear, it doesn't matter where they are. It doesn't matter what part of town we're talking about. It doesn't matter socioeconomically what we're talking about. There are always going to be people who say, I want more in life. And so, you know, if you're the only one in your cohort that wants more, bro, you need another cohort. If everybody around you is good with the status quo, except for you, you need a different circle, man. Somebody's got to be there saying, hey, bro, I want more too. I may not get as far as you, but I want more too. Okay. Let's push each other then to do that.
Dude, you just said a word. It's funny because you take me back to a time I remember being in the 8th grade. And it's funny how these things just stick with you, right? And, I mean, might be considered a corny and cheesy statement, but, I'm hanging out with friends, quote unquote, and I'm getting in trouble. And not doing anything. It's silly stuff, but it's still enough to get you suspended from school.
Right.
And I remember I got suspended for drawing in cement at school, right? I get written up and I get suspended. First time and last time I ever got suspended because my mother, she was like, you're known for the company you keep. And she was like, you keep down this path if you want to. She's like, but it doesn't end well for you if you do. And I think that...
You were probably thinking, Mom, I just drew in cement. Come on.
No, there was a stuck damn thing in cement. It's probably still there to this day. But I was like, I wasn't doing shit. But, it's funny because what you say really resonates because that was a pivotal moment for me. And understanding that, shit, I am the one in this group who wants more than everybody else. I mean, literally, I got back to school and it was like, all right, time for a new friend group. I dropped them dudes like a bad habit and it was time to move on. And I remember that was my 8th grade year and got to high school and I was just like, I got to find some people who are smarter than me.
Yeah.
I got to find some people that are smarter than me. So thank you for offering.
You said earlier that you had to figure it out. We were talking about kind of parental support, but for you in the having to figure it out, did you find yourself also surrounding yourself or at least connecting with friends, maybe not family members, who gave you the support you needed, gave you the push that you needed, gave you the motivation?
I think my motivation was to escape from what I now know as poverty. And I had always been, for the most part, a loner kind of kid.
Okay.
Because I felt like I was on a wavelength that most people around me weren't on. It wasn't until I discovered a guy in my hood that became like my childhood best friend, and we remained friends to this day, but obviously with not the same level of frequency of contact and transparency that we had at that time. Until we crossed paths, like it was just kind of a me against the world kind of mentality, not with malice, not with anger at that time, but it was just, I just kind of felt like I kind of felt like in Miami, for the most part, I was in a pond that wasn't meant for me to swim in.
Yeah.
And so I, one, decided to swim instead. And two, once he and I connected, it was like, all right, I got somebody that gets me.
Yeah.
And now that I have somebody that gets me, that gave me confidence to continue to move forward, despite being called the schoolboy, despite being called the Oreo at times, despite all of these things that could have been detractors. Like, nah, I'm cool. I can continue to follow my own path. And so then when he left, because he was a grade ahead of me, when he left, and then I was left to my own devices, and I was in that period that I was talking about where I had to figure it out. It was, all right, I think I know my potential. I think I know that of what I want long term, and this ain't it.
Yeah.
So let me tap into him and let me find some resources that can help me move myself from this situation.
It's funny. You talk about what we hear from our own people as kids. Mm-hmm. And I endured lots of difficult racial situations coming up. We lived in a small village in Germany. These kids in this German village, I didn't know what the N word was in German, but I learned it quickly. Mm. every day hearing that from those kids. Moving to Michigan, small town in Michigan, mostly white high school, still bearing and hearing racial insults from white kids. When I got to Louisiana and the black kids in my school and class made fun of me, that was like the deepest hurt. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was like that for you too, but I just remember thinking, but you're the ones who should be rooting for me to succeed. That was always for me the hardest thing. And in some ways, looking back, I pulled away from a lot of my black classmates because of that. Because when they called me professor, it was not
with love.
Right.
And it was not with love.
That don't sound like it. Not for my folks. All right. I kind of want to close out this phase of life and move on to, as you become a professional. But we've talked about fear of failure. We've talked about insecurities. We've talked about parenting and the expectations they put on us. Very interesting and deep topics. But like I said, I want to move on and talk about your professional life when we come back.
Okay.
You want to bring us that back in, bro?
So I know when we left off, we were talking about how you felt, Michael, from childhood to moving into college and the things that kind of drove you, the way that your paradigm shifted along the way of how you saw race, of how you saw yourself, of how you saw different social dynamics, and the importance of building your tribe is how I like to describe it, right? Surrounding yourself with people who are moving in a direction similar to the way that you're trying to move. Yep. And I think where we're looking to do now is transition from there and get to a place of, okay, moving into adulthood, how did you then get to that place of continuous movement, but more than continuous movement, how you continue to emotionally evolve to a place where you are now? Yeah.
So I graduated from Rice. I moved to New York, took my first post-collegiate job in New York, and I lived in New York for 4 years. Mm-hmm. I'd say the first year to year and a half moving to New York was extraordinarily difficult emotionally. I was living in New York, no family in New York City. I'd spent a summer internship in New York, but other than that, had no real friends in New York. And New York's not the kindest and gentlest city you're going to live in.
Where my wife's from. Ooh, Lord.
And in so many ways, looking back, New York brought back for me those insecurities that I had at Rice. Mm. Am I good enough? Can I cut it here? Can I find my footing here? I had some real just moments of crisis of confidence, whether staying in New York, working in corporate, whether that was even the right path for me. I can remember my first year in New York, my roommate at the time, Rich Dalgetty, he came in to the apartment, came back from work, and was just on the floor of our apartment, and I was an emotional mess, like sobbing uncontrollably. And I mean, looking back on that, Rich must have just thought, what is going on here? I thought I just had somebody to room with. I gotta play psychological counselor too.
I got a whole project.
Yeah. but yeah, New York was really tough. And you mentioned before kind of finding my tribe, and thinking back on it, that has just been a consistent theme for me. I think when I started to find my footing in New York is when I found my tribe and my people in New York, some of whom, like me, weren't from New York, and they were also from out of town. And so we're supporting one another. Some people who worked in investment banking like I did, some who worked in other industries too. And I remember talking with my parents recently about this phenomenon, because I thought this was a normal thing, whether in high school, whether in college, whether in New York. Since I've moved to other places, I just always have felt it really important to find my circle of people, my circle of friends, and to establish that pretty quickly. And I attributed that largely to grew up as a military kid. So this is kind of how I came up. You move somewhere, you find your circle of friends, and for as long as you're together, you're good. I came to realize is actually I got that from my parents. Mm-hmm. I mentioned before, my mom is from Louisiana. My dad is from Texas. They settled in California in their early 20s in the Air Force. Never been to California before. No friends, no family to speak of in Fairfield, California. But looking back, what I remember is my dad being in the Air Force. He would go on these temporary duty assignments overseas for months at a time. Philippines, Korea, Japan. And it would be me and my mom. I'm 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But my dad always had his Air Force buddies who would stop by the house, just check in on us, see how we were doing. These Air Force buddies for me they're like extended uncles. And so I still know and commonly refer to with affection Mr. Sykes and Mr. Way, and others that came around just to make sure that we were okay. And then when we moved from California to Germany, my parents had their circle of friends there. And when we moved from Germany to Michigan, they developed their circle of friends there. And so for me, it was commonplace, for instance, to spend our Christmas with other families. That's what Christmas dinner was for us. Thanksgiving dinner was spent with other families. That was Thanksgiving dinner for us. It was really only later in life that I came to realize that for many people, Christmas is going back and spending it with their parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, which is not the norm for me. And so, yeah, like my struggle to find my footing in those early years in New York was really around the difficulty of finding my tribe and working the kinds of hours I worked in investment banking, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. It makes it difficult to find your tribe because you have no time to socialize and make friends.
What did you learn to help you find that tribe, though?
One of the things I learned then was to lean on my faith. I think New York is when I learned that my faith wasn't about I go to church because my parents said we have to go to church on Sunday. My faith wasn't about traditions and customs. It was really about, do I have a relationship with God? Do I trust that he is leading my life? And if I trust that he's leading my life and he's got me in this place, then there must be a reason for that. But also practically speaking, I found a church in Brooklyn. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. I found a church in Brooklyn, and that for me became the constant. Things could be crazy Monday through Saturday. I knew I was going to be in that church on Sunday morning.
So, all right. The one thing I know about you is you are Mr. Humor when you want to be and when you need to be. So I want to understand, as you enter the work world, what is that like for you? How does humor work for you in that? But did you ever feel like you had to wear a mask and going into this very conservative space that is investment banking and Wall Street?
Yeah, look, I'm not here to be somebody's court jester. I am funny. I'm hella funny. I know that. But I just remember thinking early on, I'm not going to be the person who entertains these folks in this setting. I'm not going to go to the party. I'm not going to go to the corporate functions and parties and Christmas parties and make all the jokes and have everybody laughing and cracking up. I'm not doing that, because in my mind, if you see me as somebody who's entertaining and fun, when you get to the place where you say, let's make the decisions about the money, you don't invite the comedian to that room.
Say that.
The business people go in that room. And when they make the decision and they come out, and now they need some stress relief, okay, bring the funny guy out.
Yeah.
And I just was not going to allow that to be how they saw me. So I might, with my peers, joke around. You know, we're 22, 23, 24 years old. Let's joke around and have fun. But when I'm dealing with more senior people, I want you to see me as somebody that you can trust with your business and with the business decisions. I wanted people to see me and say, I could trust him with my money.
It's such an elevated perspective and such a high sense of self-awareness and intentionality. Where does that come from? At that age, especially. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? At 23?
Yeah, I just, I don't know, man. I guess I am really observant around and about the people who are successful in what they do and how they carry themselves, black or white. The people who are successful, what do you do and how do you carry yourself? Yeah. And I can make the decision. If that's what it takes to be successful, am I willing to do that?
Okay, wait a minute, because this now references just my thought process that I had to change. How do you strike that balance between modeling what you see? Yeah. Right? Because everybody, for the most part, who are seeing in you, I have to assume we're white. Yeah. Right? I have to make that assumption. But being true to your heritage, be true to who you are and who you were brought up. How do you strike that balance, right? Because then that's what I'm referring to when we talk about wearing the mask. I mean, because, right, people may be hearing this and figuring or thinking like, well, so did he sell out? And I know that's not the case. But, you know, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, it's funny, the sellout term, man, we be killing ourselves with the sellout term. I was talking to a young cat once in New York. I was talking to a young cat because one of the things I have come to learn is I want young black boys to see examples of success that look like them. One of the reasons I loved living in Brooklyn is because I wanted black kids in Brooklyn who were walking to school to see a black guy in a suit going to the subway, because I had never seen that myself. And I just think that exposure is important. Maybe that's why I developed such a sense of purpose and direction, because I just feel like if you see it, then you can be it. But on the sellout thing, I was talking to this young cat, and he was saying to me he didn't want to have to cut off his dreads, didn't want to have to cut his hair, change his style to fit the workplace. And he asked me how I felt about that and what I thought about that. And I said, listen, I hear you. I understand that. And I'm not saying, by the way, that you have to do it. But what I'm asking you is this. There aren't a lot of black senior bankers, but there are a few. Do you see any of them with an earring in their ear? Do you see any of them with long hair? So if that's what you want to achieve, they're showing us a template of what that looks like. You can make the decision for yourself whether you want that or not, but understand, we don't get to rewrite the rules. Obama became the most powerful man in the world first black president. And yet I remember thinking, as powerful as this guy is, think about it. People were talking about he wore a tan suit.
Yeah. Now it's not an issue.
People were talking about the fist bump with Michelle. Even he, as the most powerful man in the world, had to realize you can't rewrite all the rules. And so, for me, I just said, again, I've got to make the decision for me about where I draw the line on what I'm willing to do to succeed. And you talked about how there weren't a lot of black people necessarily that could model that in banking. As a black man, I could make all this money and have all this success, but like, make no mistake about it, there is a place where they all can be at the party doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But if I do the crazy stuff too, there is a different standard. I cut that article out. I carried it with me for years to just remind myself, like, make no mistake about it. I don't care, Rice, New York, Stanford, LA, corporate exec, I don't care. There is just a different set of rules. And for me, my integrity matters too much for me to blow it over a careless, reckless decision. But also for me, it was just a reminder, don't work this hard to achieve this success, to gain the hubris and arrogance that you can get away with anything because you can. Oof. You know what I mean? Oof. I just think sometimes we get so high up, we think that we can just, all the other guys is doing it so that we can do it too. And like, I'm sorry, and kids see that and they feel like it's unfair.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you anything different. It is. Yeah. So, I play basketball. Like, the referee's blowing the whistle crazy at me. Hey, what I learned in basketball is adjust to the whistle. I mean, we could sit here and yell and scream at the ref and say that's a bad call, but or just adjust to the whistle. You have to play this game today under these sets of conditions. That's it. We can't talk about what the other game was. We can't talk about how they ripped the other team. We can't talk about how the all-white team got. We have to play this game under these sets of conditions.
So do you think that mentality, that approach to life allowed you to be one of the most senior execs at a company we won't name, but it is a media company here in Atlanta?
Shout out to that company that we won't name.
Yeah. Which is how you and I met. My wife and him worked together at that company here in Atlanta. She likes to say I stole her friend, but it is what it is. But do you think that approach, that mentality is what allows you to become one of the most senior executives at that company?
It had to have played its part. Yeah, it had to have played its part. It's funny, the humor question you asked me before. Had a colleague who was doing a job rotation, and he rotated through my group, and so I was managing him for about 10 weeks. And he asked me about two things. He said, I noticed you dress up every day for work. This is still in the era where we're wearing suits and ties. He said, every day you dress up for work, every day suit and tie. Some people, they don't wear a tie every day. Some people, jeans on Friday, we're trying to relax a little bit. He said, this
dude didn't wear jeans for a long time.
He said, you don't do that. He said, why is that? I said, Tyler, that's a great question. The reason I don't wear jeans is this. If the CEO of the company, who I can't name because you don't want me to put the company out there, home of the Dragons. If the CEO of the company says, Michael, can you swing by my office? I need to talk to you about something. What I can't have happen is I say to my assistant, tell him I can't come there because I'm not dressed appropriately. I can't have that happen. looked at me and I said, yeah, that's why I dress ready for that call to come. And I'm not going to walk in that room and either can't go because I'm not dressed appropriately or get there and feel out of place.
Less than.
Because all the C-suite folks are dressed like they're here for business, and I'm dressed like I'm leaving at 3:00.
And that's a real thing. These things have happened.
Things happen.
You've gotten a call from the CEO and had to talk to him.
Yes. And on the humor part of it, Tyler was, you're a funny guy. But in the meetings, he said, we can be walking to the meeting and you joke. We walk in that door and sit down in the meeting, jokes are done and you're all business. Like, why is that? And I said to him, as I said here, because I don't want to be in this company known as the Chris Tucker of Entertainment Company X. I'm just not here to do that.
Audience, you're not seeing it. It's not coming through on the camera, but I'm telling you, this is one of the most funny corporate dudes I know in my life. Like, I aspire to be as funny as he is. I just wanted to give you that aside.
I was in LA going to Long Beach Jazz Festival. And I was with my friend Jennifer, who you've met. And we were walking to the gate entrance and we're joking back and forth. And this older black lady is in front of us with her family. And for 5 or 10 minutes, she just hears this conversations back and forth with us. And she says to her daughter, that boy is so funny. He reminds me, what's that boy name we watched in the movie last night? And the daughter says, Rush Hour, Mama. We watched Chris Tucker. He remind me of Chris Tucker. He's so funny. You should be a comedian, she said to me. And I looked at her and said, you thought those jokes were funny? Yeah, you were hilarious. I said, but you didn't pay me for any of those jokes. I said, the free jokes are always the funniest ones. I said, my jokes, my free jokes are good, but the $20 cover plus 2 drink minimum, I said, my jokes aren't there yet. So I appreciate you pointing out my humor, but my humor's, free on YouTube humor, not pay for my stand-up, humor.
It's like, I'm not Kevin Hart. I'm not trying to be Kevin Hart.
Right. I ain't filling up stadiums. I'm not even filling up church pews with my humor. Come on.
All right, bro. So there are a couple questions we like to ask every guest.
Okay.
That I want to hit you with. And the first question is, what do you think about the concept that the world sees black men as beasts?
Ooh. Wow. When I think about the concept, my immediate reaction to that is sad. I've gotten so much love and affirmation and strength and wisdom from black men. Like the love you get from a black man is not like the love you get from anybody else. It's just different. And so the idea that the world sees us as beasts, sad. It's tragic. True, but it's sad. And it manifests itself in, look at me, man. I'm not a threat to nobody. These glasses ain't a threat to nobody. The idea that white women would clutch their purses around me, come on.
So wait.
Come on.
Okay, you just said something that I don't think people explore, right? You said, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, there's nothing like the love from a black man.
Yeah.
But that is the antithesis of what people would have you believe.
Isn't that crazy?
So help me understand it. What do you think is so unique about the love of a black man?
Man, have you heard a black man sing a love song?
Teddy.
When a black man sings a love song, you hear his heart in a way that you just don't hear when other people sing them songs. We were talking about Lenny Williams earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, when Lenny Williams tells you he loves you, you be like, man, He is going through it, right? He going through it. Listen, I appreciate what you brothers are doing here, because you have to cultivate an environment in which Black men can get to a place of showing their vulnerability.
Yes, sir.
But make no mistake about it, when that vulnerability is allowed to be expressed, the passion and the fervor,
Preach.
and the loyalty, like, bruh, I am down with you for whatever. There's nothing like it. Really, there's nothing like it. And so, yeah, I appreciate the brothers in my life who have allowed me to see that, and allowed me to explore that, and allowed me the space to be like, it's okay. It's okay for us to share that and show that to one another.
So ordinarily, I would close out with this next question, but I want to spend some time on something. Again, we're not naming the company, but when I say this person's name, people will be able to figure it out, right? So, Dick Parsons, right? You had the opportunity to actually work with that guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Help me understand, between you and Dick Parsons, how do you navigate and climb the corporate ladder to such high heights? Like, I mean, there aren't many of us who become executive VPs and are responsible for billions of dollars. Like, how does that happen? And then what decisions do you have to make along the way that cause you to challenge your emotional fortitude?
Love Dick Parsons. And his loss last year was tough for those of us who knew him. Dick Parsons told me something. So I worked with Dick Parsons when I was early in my career. And he was formative in shaping the arc and trajectory of my career for the last 25 years. One of the things he said to me, though, when I was talking with him one-on-one, was he expressed to me how lonely it is at that level. And I thought, you're Dick Parsons. You're the number 2 man at Time Warner, and beloved, gets along great with everybody. Not a lot of hubris, not a lot of ego. Excellent business judgment. Dick Parsons was the one who, when there were troubled situations, people called in to get everything straight. The idea that would be lonely was just odd to me.
And then you felt it.
And I felt it. Then I became one of the top 3 to 5 senior most Black people within a big media company. And I said, oh, I see what he means now. It's the feeling of being in a room full of people and yet feeling alone.
You know what's funny, right? And so what I want people to understand is that loneliness isn't only felt at the highest echelons of corporate America, right? How many times that do Black men find themselves being the only one in the room?
Yeah.
Right? So what I'd love to hear from you is, how do you deal with that loneliness, especially when a lot of times, and you're an extremely intelligent brother, but I know for me, my intelligence has been questioned.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah. The questioning of intelligence, can I just say really quickly, one of the craziest performance reviews I had in my corporate life was when I had a manager say to me that I was intimidating. And I said, help me understand what you mean by intimidating. And he said, you you go into these meetings and you come off as like you're smarter than everybody else.
I literally had somebody say to me,
Negro.
Right.
I literally had somebody say to me in a meeting in front of everybody else, you don't have to sound like the smartest person in the room.
So I said, so you want me to pretend to be dumb to help everybody feel better about themselves? That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, yeah, how do I deal with the loneliness? I wish I had a great answer for this. It really, for me, comes down to me being able to compartmentalize that work life from my outside of work life. And so if I'm in a work environment where I am the only one, it, for me, necessitates then having even stronger bonds outside of work. Oftentimes with people who may not even do the work that I do. So they may not even relate to what I'm going through at work. And oftentimes I'm not using them to say like, hey, I'm going through this at work and you help me figure it out. I'm just using them honestly to just refill my tank. That's all. Like, shout out to my barber Red. I love you, bro. Like, I've been rocking with Red for going on now 14 years. He does give great cuts, but he refills my tank. And he's no corporate cat. But just, I have found that that's how I combat that loneliness, is just have other outlets outside the workplace where I can say, I can get my tank refilled so that I can go back in there and, you know, do the battle we got to do sometimes.
I'm going to let you jump in a second because I want to make sure you get some stuff in. But what jumps out to me when you talk about this is this notion of bring your whole self to work. Right. And what I have found is
y'all don't want all this.
Right.
Come on.
But what I found is they get to bring their whole self to work, but you have to be the one to say, yeah, I'm the funny guy, but I will not be the court jester. But they can crack all the jokes they want in every setting. So
y'all don't. Listen. You don't want all of this. They
don't want to smoke.
So then don't tell these young Black professionals, bring your whole self to work. You can be yourself here. Don't hear me clearly, folks.
Looking at that camera right there.
Hear me clearly. They're lying to you. They don't want all of you. And they might want all of you, but not all at once.
That's...
You know, so there are times where we have to show our passion. Mm-hmm. But even when we show our passion and excitement, maybe just show it to 7 or 8, not all the way to 10. And yes, there are moments, topics, right? and there are moments where we have to kind of stand on what we believe to be true. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we have to argue based on facts and give them a little bit of feeling, but then fall back to the facts. Mm-hmm. And there have been many an instance in time where I've had people coming at me with feeling and I cannot return that feeling back to them because they don't want all this. They don't.
I describe it as learning how to cultivate your authentic professional self.
Yeah.
Because to your point, the bring your whole self is a lie. And it's the combination of understanding what is the code of conduct of your company culture, combined with, okay, now that I understand that, how can I then bring myself to a level to where I'm bringing enough of myself to where I don't feel like I'm capitulating, that I'm assimilating, that I'm selling out, or whatever that language might be internally, to then show up in a way that feels relatively true to yourself while still navigating effectively.
I have lots of flavors.
Yeah.
I am comprised of lots of flavors. Yeah. We as Black people are multi-dimensional. And so I suppose if I were to say, what superpower do I have? It is the ability to, within a setting, figure out pretty quickly what part of me do I need to show you for you to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. So that we can then have a conversation, so that you can hear me and I can hear you. Yeah. And I don't have to get hung up on, but I got 31 other flavors here. No. if you just need vanilla, I can give you vanilla. It's cool. And there's no sellout because there is a part of me that has vanilla.
Right.
If you need chocolate, I can give you some chocolate. That's cool. You need strawberry, I can give you strawberry. That's cool. But just being able to figure out what flavor do you need from me, not get hung up on, but I'm not feeling that kind of flavor today. And because we're trying to get work done. But we're trying to build a podcast.
And staying in that metaphor, I'm not going to try to give you a flavor I don't have.
Not trying to give you a flavor I don't have, and I'm not going to force on you a flavor that doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, just so yeah, sometimes a little bit of humor. Okay. But I'm not going to just come in there and rip roaring with jokes all the time. Sometimes a little bit of let's just get down to business. Sometimes a little bit of before we jump in, how's your family doing?
Right. You ain't running in there with jazz hands.
Right. Just, and bringing it back to Dick Parsons, I think that's one of the things I saw from him is he showed me. Dick showed me that you can still be human in the workplace. You can still have humanity. You can still care about people. We were, and I know you were wrapping up here, but just it reminded me of how he was going in to speak to a group of employees, and they had asked me to write his speech for him. And I'm nervous about it, and I've written up the talking points, and it's merger this and strategy that and growth opportunities this and all the great business jargon. And he looks at it, and I'm talking to him and just reminding him, make sure you hit this point, make sure you hit this point, make sure you hit this point.
Right. And
he looks at it and he hands the paper back to me. He walks out there. Maybe 5% of what I prepped for him, he said. The other 95% was just Dick Parsons doing his thing. He came off, and I asked him, did you not feel like what I wrote for you was good? And he said, no, it was great. Oh, why didn't you use it? I mean, these are the lyrics to the song, and then you went out there and sang something else. And he said, Michael, sometimes you got to just talk to people and acknowledge their feelings and let them know that you hear them and you understand. And that's all he did in that conversation was just, going through a merger, a lot of changes going on. I know this can be really disruptive. We're going to get through it. He just provided reassurance. And I just remember taking that lesson with me. Like, don't get so caught up in all the work and the corporate and that we forget people are still people. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, people just, they need to see that flavor too. Just, I care. And we'll get to the business, but just, I care. And I think especially now, given where we are as a country, it's imperative on leaders. It's imperative on executives. It's imperative on brothers, fathers, husbands to let folks know we see them and we care.
All right, I'm going to hit you with our final question.
Okay.
But I got one more thing after that, but I'm going to let you respond to this. Ask you a question about, black men as beasts. But I want to juxtapose that with this question. What, if anything, signals to you that you are truly loved and people see your beauty?
True love and people seeing my beauty. There's nothing like the feeling of being able to breathe in and breathe out. And in whatever state I'm in, it's okay. And have an environment around me where people say, like, whatever state you're in, it's okay. We're not here to judge. All that stuff that you dealt with as a kid. Are you smart enough? Are you too smart? Are you working hard enough? You work too hard? You making enough money? You make too much money? You think you're better than like all of that stuff? There's nothing like all of that melting away. But just having it be like whatever state you're in, you're good. Like you're good enough. And not just you're good enough, but actually we celebrate you. That's there's no better feeling for me in the world than that.
All right. So we're going to come to a close. But before we do that, part of the thing that we do on this podcast is we reach out to someone that we know that truly loves you. And we ask them,
Oh boy.
can you give me
Oh boy. Who'd you talk to?
your wife?
Oh, Donitra.
So we asked them. We're gonna have him take us on his journey in
Okay.
life, but we want you to tell us how you have experienced that journey.
Oh wow.
So she provided something for us that I'm going to read for you to close us out.
Oh, that's messed up, man. Okay. Let me get myself right. Go.
Her words. In high school, where we met but didn't date,
Yes.
the counselors told him he would not be able to go get into Rice.
It's true.
Racist.
That's true.
So he went on to prove them wrong and got his bachelor's in economics. From there, he worked in Wall Street, crazy hours, living in a box in Brooklyn. He went on to Stanford, again proving that he is one of the best and brightest. Years later, we got married. Another genius move. Michael has always been driven. He feels the need to show he is worthy of love, attention, and affection. His parents are wonderful people, just not very affectionate. And they were a military family, so they traveled a lot. Not around extended family much. He learned to make friends his family. That's why he's great at connecting with people. He sees the best in everyone and tries to help them reach whatever goals they set for themselves. He is unselfish. I would totally agree with that. His love language is service. That's how he shows love. He receives love through words of affirmation. But don't all men need that, quote unquote?
Yeah, we do.
He's an amazing dad to these girls. Arabia is his, quote unquote, number one girl.
Number one.
As he calls her. Not biologically, but in every other way. He adopted her soon after we married. So he's only been a husband and father. Never just husband. She says, we are waiting for Anaya to get out of here. Again, he was in a space where he felt like he had to prove himself. He put so much pressure on himself, but we're working on that. He would do absolutely anything for our family. Only God comes before us. His faith keeps us grounded with success when success tries to take him to crazy places. And with that, we're out. Mic drop.